Anyway, let's move things along. Also on this undercard, there's quite a few big name fighters. So Jaron Ennis was also in action. I really like him from what I've seen the last couple of years. Alex, give us the lowdown on this one, please.
You know, when this fight was announced, when it was coming down to bet, everything I heard was bet, 1 through 3, 1 through 6. There's no way this guy's making it. And, the biggest thing I always asked was, has anyone seen Corinne fight, right? Or as it spelled Karen? A lot of Karen jokes constantly. But man, Corinne, the thing about this fight was no one's seen him fight, so no one knew what to expect. So was it more of we were all surprised about what happened, or is Corinne better than what we expected? And I think it's both. I've never seen, a guy from Eastern Europe move as swiftly as he did. I mean, he has good live feet, and he was able to really cause Duran a lot of issues and frustrate him. Now, Corinne didn't land, the most telling blows or the most eye-catching, but he was able to land clean on Duran, and it's probably the most clean shots that I've seen land on Ennis. But I mean, he ate them like a kid does opening up their favorite candy. I mean, it was nothing to him. Very frustrating for Duran, you could tell. However, I liked how he stayed committed. He had a pretty steady body attack, looked fast, but it seemed he does have a little issues with lateral movement. He's explosive, but maybe not the best feet, or maybe he can just drill it more to be able to show it in a 12-round fight. But we've seen Duran go 12 rounds now. We know that it doesn't seem like he got tired, and to me, he's just not ready like people think. He needed this fight for his development, but man, he needs another 1 or 2 if he really wants to give himself the best chance to be able to defeat two of the best welterweights we've had seen since Mayweather in Errol Spence and Terrence Bud Crawford. Because if he steps in there now, there's just things he hasn't experienced in the ring with 8-ounce gloves that those gentlemen have and have overcome.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I was kind of one of those that thought that having seen, he's kind of had some pretty highlight reel stuff in recent years. He does look the real deal to me. So I've been like, maybe this guy could be ready to take over from the two top dogs that don't want to fight each other. But yeah, I've been seeing quite a lot of flack on Twitter, I guess, where people say maybe he's not as good as he was, or as we assumed he was going to be, or not exactly very positive for his performance last night. Josh, do you want to add your thoughts to that?
Yeah, it was pretty funny. We were talking about this last week, and we were looking at Karen's record, or Kareem, but Karen, we were looking at his record on the podcast last week and trying to understand, hey, has he been in with anybody? Who is this guy? Because as Vega mentioned, nobody probably had really seen him, or probably a select few, if any. And we saw that he fought older Ali Fanica. He beat a Ryan Martin that was opposite of the Ryan Martin that I think I was thinking of. But that being said, when I was actually watching the contest with Ennis, after about that third round, I was saying to myself, is this going to actually be the toughest fight that Ennis has had? Because I must say that some will call it running, but the way that Karen was moving, I mean, he was giving Ennis problems as far as being able to land anything clean. And we saw a number of wild shots from Ennis, which we typically hadn't seen in that fashion. And then another thing that came to my mind, probably right now here a few minutes ago, is I'm kind of going to lump him now into that category with Janabek Alimkhanuly, in terms of two guys that they were saying were the boogeyman of the division, and then they take on someone who's a bit unheralded. No one had expectation that they would do anything with, and they thought they would get out of there. So I'm going to lump him in that category in terms of that boogeyman moniker may be the antithesis of what a fighter wants, because it seems to put some expectations on that fighter that they could ultimately not live up to in a single fight, and that can change the dynamic a bit. But that being said, I still hold Ennis in high regards. I just think that this boogeyman thought or concept, as far as him in the welterweight division, I think that's probably a bit overstated at this point. And yeah, in seeing that, yeah, I don't know if he's ready for Crawford and Spence at this very moment. I do think he would give them a good fight. They won't move exactly as much as Karen did, but I do think that they showed that, hey, experience can matter in some sense. And, Ennis has more fights, of course, but that being said, that doesn't necessarily dictate the amount of just overall experience with rounds that a person has, because a lot of Ennis's opponents were kind of taken out of there in quick fashion. But hey, he can improve from this. I think it was a learning lesson for him, and I do think that a bit of it was probably some anticipation on his end that, hey, he was probably thinking he was going to get this guy out of here as well. He was probably hearing what was being said and just thinking about what could be next. But certainly this will set him back a tone in terms of his thought process, and probably go in that gym working a little bit more on, hey, what if I get one of these guys who doesn't want to engage much and they move well? How do I go about cutting the ring off a bit better and doing it in a more definitive fashion? So I would say, yeah, Karen, he came out of this probably looking a little bit better than what many people thought, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him in there again if he wanted to be one of those sort of trap opponents for one of these prospects coming up.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to touch on that with like Ennis, in the whole, I call them booger men, because I don't think anyone really is this boogeyman like they say. Like, I think they got to stop with that nonsense. But this is why you need to go through these type of fights. You need to get this experience. Duran, you look at him, they say he's the second coming of Roy Jones, and I understand why. I mean, he's fast, he's strong, he gets these nice KOs. I mean, he's hitting dudes, and they're saying that the back of their head was hit. I mean, that's how fast and quick he is, right? But you look at a dude like Virgil Ortiz, excuse me, Virgil. You look at the way he's been built, right? Beat Mauricio Herrera, who's a former world champion, right? He also faced Brad Solomon, who was a top amateur. There was another gentleman that had one loss, Antonio Ortiz, I think his name was, or Antonio something, was a top prospect that he defeated. Orozco he defeated, right? Mean Machine, who went in there with Bud Crawford. Everyone saw him hurt Bud Crawford. He hurts Virgil, and Virgil pounds him out worse than the way Bud did. And then you see him against Michael McKinson, gets extended the longest of his career as a mover, very crafty, and still gets a stoppage. So even though I think, eye test wise, I see Ennis as the better prospect, Ortiz has gone through these, trials and has passed them all. So that's why, I believe that Virgil is further along in his development, regardless of, Duran having the more, eye-catching talent. Go ahead, Papa.
Spot on right there.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. I don't like this boogeyman type of nonsense that gets labelled on some boxes. And it's also equally unfair when their stock kind of plummets a little bit due to a poor performance. Everyone can have an off night. I also just noticed on there that all three judges scored that 120, 108. Is that reflective of the actual fight? Or is it a bit unfair on Karen?
I mean, I gave Karen 3 rounds. I think he deserved at least 1 or 2.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was a clear victory for Boots. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't notice such until now. Actually, I didn't pay attention to the scorecards to that degree. So I'm just seeing now that it was a wipeout on their cards. But yeah, I do think that Karen had to win at least one of those rounds. I remember he was able to land a few good shots. The inactivity probably was his major downfall. But yeah, I didn't see it as a complete wipeout. But hey, who knows?
I don't suppose it matters.